Hello everyone, and welcome to the channel, Who Created It and How? Today we're diving deep into a question that has shaped civilizations for thousands of years. How did they govern people? From the first tribal leaders to the complex political systems of today, the methods of ruling have been as diverse and fascinating as humanity itself. Let's travel back in time. Imagine a small, early human tribe. Who was in charge? Likely it was the strongest hunter, the wisest elder, or the most charismatic individual. Governance was simple, based on survival, tradition, and direct consent. Decisions about where to hunt or when to move camp were made collectively, or by a trusted leader whose authority came from respect, not a written constitution. This was the dawn of politics, raw and personal. As societies grew, so did the complexity of governing them. The agricultural revolution led to settled communities, which became the first cities in places like Mesopotamia. Suddenly, you had more people, more resources, and more problems. You needed someone to manage irrigation systems, store surplus grain, and settle disputes between neighbors. This is where we see the rise of the first formal rulers, the priest kings. Think about ancient Egypt. The pharaoh wasn't just a king. He was considered a living god. His authority was absolute, derived directly from the divine. This concept, known as the divine right of kings, was incredibly powerful. Why would you question a ruler chosen by the gods themselves? The pharaoh's government was a vast bureaucracy of scribes, officials, and priests, all working to maintain order, collect taxes in the form of grain, and build monumental projects like the pyramids, which were not just tombs but powerful symbols of the pharaoh's eternal power and the stability of the state. But not everyone believed in divine rule. Let's hop over to ancient Greece, specifically Athens. Around the 5th century BC, they tried a radical new experiment, democratia, or rule by the people. In Athens, eligible male citizens could directly participate in the assembly, vote on laws, and even serve in government offices chosen by lottery. It was a system built on the idea that citizens had a voice and a responsibility in their own governance. Of course, it wasn't perfect. Women, slaves, and foreigners were excluded, but it planted the seed of an idea that would change the world forever, that power could reside with the many, not just the few. Meanwhile, the Romans were building an empire with a different model. They started as a republic a bit like Athens, but with a more structured system of elected officials, like consuls, and a powerful senate composed of the aristocracy. The Roman genius was in law and administration. They created a comprehensive legal code that applied throughout their vast territories, providing a common framework that helped hold the empire together. When the republic eventually fell and gave way to emperors, this legal and administrative machine kept running. The emperor was the ultimate authority, but the day-to-day business of governing a diverse empire from Britain to Syria relied on this incredibly organized system. After the fall of Rome, Europe entered the Middle Ages, and governance became fragmented. Feudalism was the name of the game. Power was decentralized. A king might rule a kingdom in name, but his real power depended on the loyalty of powerful lords and nobles who controlled their own lands or fiefs. In exchange for land, these vassals pledged military service and loyalty to the king. It was a complex web of personal oaths and obligations. Your life was dictated not by a distant emperor, but by your local lord. The church also held immense power, often acting as a parallel government with its own laws, courts, and taxes, creating a constant power struggle between secular kings and religious popes. But this decentralized world wouldn't last. As the Middle Ages waned, powerful monarchs in countries like France, England, and Spain began to consolidate their power. They built professional armies, created more efficient tax collection systems, and centralized their authority, chipping away at the power of the nobles. This was the age of absolutism, epitomized by figures like Louis XIV of France, the Sun King, who famously declared, "L'État, c'est moi." I am the state. His word was law, and the entire government apparatus was designed to project his personal power and glory. Then, the Enlightenment happened. Thinkers like John Locke, Montesquieu, and Rousseau began to ask revolutionary questions. Where does a ruler's power really come from? From God or from the consent of the governed. They argued for natural rights, life, liberty, and property, and for governments that were limited and accountable to the people. These ideas were like political dynamite. They exploded in the American and French revolutions. The American colonists, tired of being ruled by a king an ocean away without any representation, declared their independence and created a republic based on a written constitution. It established a system of checks and balances, dividing power between three branches of government, the legislative, executive, and judicial, to prevent any one person or group from becoming too powerful. The French Revolution was even more radical, overthrowing centuries of monarchy and aristocracy in the name of liberté, égalité, fraternité, liberty, equality, fraternity. Though it descended into chaos and led to the rise of Napoleon, it shattered the old order in Europe and spread the ideals of democracy and nationalism far and wide. In the 19th and 20th centuries, the world saw a clash of these new and old ideas. The great European empires expanded their rule across the globe, imposing their systems of governance on colonized peoples. But at the same time, the fight for democracy, self-determination, and workers' rights intensified. This led to the rise of new and sometimes dangerous ideologies. Communism, as envisioned by Karl Marx and implemented in the Soviet Union, China, and elsewhere, proposed a radical new way of organizing society. In theory, it was a stateless society where all property was publicly owned, and each person worked and was paid according to their abilities and needs. In practice, it led to totalitarian states where a single party held all power, controlled the economy, and suppressed all dissent. The government governed every aspect of life, from what you could read to where you could work. On the other end of the spectrum, fascism arose in Italy and Germany. It was a hyper-nationalistic ideology that glorified the state, a charismatic leader, and military strength, while crushing individual liberty. Governance was based on absolute obedience to the leader, and the idea that the nation was more important than any individual. The 20th century was largely defined by the struggle between these systems: liberal democracy, communism, and fascism. World War II and the Cold War were, at their core, conflicts over how societies should be governed. So where are we today? Most countries in the world are, at least in name, democracies. But the way they practice democracy varies widely. Some are stable republics with long traditions of peaceful power transitions. Others are newer, more fragile democracies struggling with corruption and instability. And some are illiberal democracies, or authoritarian states that hold elections but lack the fundamental freedoms and rule of law that are the hallmarks of a true democracy. Modern governance is also facing new challenges. How do we govern the internet, a borderless space that defies traditional laws? How do international bodies like the United Nations govern relations between countries? And how do we tackle global problems like climate change, which require cooperation on an unprecedented scale? The history of governance is a story of constant experimentation, conflict, and evolution. From the simple authority of a tribal chief to the complex web of global institutions, we've been searching for the best way to live together for millennia. The question of how should we be governed is one we are still trying to answer. What do you think is the most effective form of government? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks so much for watching. If you found this journey through history interesting, please give this video a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to Who Created It and How for more deep dives into the forces that shape our world. We'll see you in the next one.